The body would never inherently attack itself. It's quite anti-life, anti-biology, and our bodies are so divinely built that there's an inherent intelligence already in there. When you cut yourself, it just automatically heals.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Eversio Experience podcast. We hope that you are ready to go deep today because our guest is someone whose presence I think you don't just listen to, you actually feel. And we know this from experience. And you will know if you have ever stumbled across one of his Instagram reels, because he's usually somewhere deep in our British Columbian forests, speaking straight to your soul. We are so honored to welcome Dr. Kevin Preston, a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner whose work brings together ancient wisdom and, my favorite thing, the evolution of human consciousness. Kevin is the visionary behind the New Human Interstellar event, an experience that the Eversio Wellness team had the privilege of attending last fall. It truly moved us. So much so that we knew we had to bring him on the show to share his heart and his wisdom with all of you. That weekend, it wasn't just a gathering for us. I think Dr. Des will agree. It was this remembering. It was a recalibration, coming home to what it means to be human in this rapidly shifting world we're in. And honestly, I think we can say that we are still integrating it. It was real. What we really love about Kevin is that there is a groundedness in his work, which is rooted in Eastern medicine, which we love, but also this energetic alignment and the belief that connection might be the missing key in healing. His approach to TCM goes far beyond symptom relief. It's about restoring harmony between the mind, body, and soul, and remembering that we each carry an infinite capacity to heal. You could say that we are in super alignment with all of that. So you know why we're here today. And we're going to talk about health and vitality and the emotional roots beneath it all. So make a big cup of tea. We got ours here. Get comfy. And you're welcome in advance for this one. Kevin, we are so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the Eversio Experience.
Wow, that was incredible introduction. Just, so beautiful. I got goosebumps when you said remembering. And I do think that we're in that phase of humanity in a lot of different layers, that there's a lot of remembering happening and sometimes resistance to the remembering too. But happy to chat with both of you and see where we go.
So excited to have you on the show. I think I'd love to start with something big picture for our audience. You know, we're seeing this massive rise in autoimmune disease, chronic fatigue, hormonal dysregulation, anxiety, and especially in women, but also in men as well. From your perspective in traditional Chinese medicine, what is happening at a root level for us humans?
There's this saying in China, well, there's lots of sayings in Chinese medicine, but one of the principles that I've loved and it's guided my practice for many years is to live in harmony with nature. And I think we're at a time where that's not happening. And to the degree that somebody is out of harmony with their own inner nature and the world around them is usually proportionate to the disturbance, the imbalance, the disease, the illness that they're experiencing in the body.
Yeah. And I've lived that. I think that's the story that so much where there's an age difference, of course, between three of us on screen. But as a menopausal woman who has been through that autoimmune journey, to be able to look back and see that's all it was. It was never an illness, a disease, all of the words that were given to it on a piece of paper. I was out of balance. Mm-hmm. And to be able to look at it so simply now, you want to share it with others, but it's difficult. It's difficult when you're in it to realize that it could be just this, go outside and put your hand on a tree and decide if there's a difference in the frequency between you and that tree. And it sounds so hokey and simple, but it is how I realized what I needed to do to come back into that connection. And I do think that's what we felt at your event. I do think that's what we see you actually showing the world when, like I say, when you're sharing your work, you're often in nature while you're saying it.
I've noticed for myself, I am in the most harmony, the most vital, the most clear, grounded, all of those things when I'm spending a lot of time in nature. And my body will tell me when I'm not doing that enough. Yeah. And I'll start feeling a little bit of static in my system. The mind starts, pinballing around a little bit. And when I see, I've seen thousands of patients over nearly 20 years now. And that's the thing I keep coming back to, is where are we in disharmony with our environments and our inner environment. And it's interesting too, is like, how did we get into a society that being in nature, hugging a tree, touching a tree, got made fun of for so long, and was like viewed as hokey? Our ancestors in many indigenous cultures around the planet, it's the opposite. Like, you guys are in a cubicle doing this, like, what happened? And so there's a big mindset shift that I see happening, which is really beautiful. And even, through the events that we're doing, that a lot of people are craving that, but they don't necessarily know that they are. They know something's missing. They feel it in their bones. They feel it in their body. They feel it in the cells and the immune system, especially with like autoimmune conditions and all these inflammatory conditions. That's the body saying, I'm not in harmony. We need to figure out how to do that. And it'll keep escalating those aspects of symptomology and inflammation until that's resolved or brought back into harmony. And so I am the guy that does all the hokey things now. And I've also realized most powerful things are often free, and nature has so many answers. And I think we forget that we are nature. Like, we are actually inherently of the earth and the minerals and the rocks and everything else. We're just animated differently, and the frontal lobe likes to get in the way a little bit.
Totally. I remember hearing, like, as an ND in clinic, I remember hearing some of my colleagues say, you can write a prescription for your patients to go to like BC parks and, get that and I'm like, how, why is, that just seems so crazy to me, how we have just become so disconnected from nature. And Brandi, you and I talk about this all the time, is that like society and conditioning and how we are now is this disconnection from ourselves. And the things that are medicine for us are what help bring us home to ourselves. It's really that piece coming back to yourself. In Western medicine, things are often labeled autoimmune. And for those listening, that means, the body is attacking itself. There's this disharmony within yourself and your physiology. How does traditional Chinese medicine interpret autoimmune disease differently than the Western medical model?
Well, and I might weave this around in a few different directions, so bear with me. I think even the terminology and the general understanding from a conventional medicine point of view for autoimmune conditions is completely backwards. And I also believe it's backwards because the body doesn't make mistakes. The body would never inherently attack itself. It's quite anti-life, anti-biology. And our bodies are so divinely built that there's an inherent intelligence already in there. When you cut yourself, it just automatically heals. So if that's not happening, it means there's a disturbance in the body, or the body's under-resourced, or there's something drawing that healing potential and that energy. And I had a patient last week, we chatted about that. She said, I take forever to heal. My husband cuts his arm, gets a little scratch or whatever, it's healed in like a day or two. Mine, it'll still be there weeks later. And I said, well, that's because your body is under-resourced and there's not enough chi, vitality, like vital force or blood and energy to really actually repair that. Because it's not like your body doesn't know how to do that all of a sudden. So why isn't it doing that? And then we dive in a little bit deeper. So same with autoimmune conditions. If there's Hashimoto's, or there's a thyroid condition, or there's inflammatory condition through the whole body, and now it seems like so many things just get lumped into that category. And I kind of feel like, hey, if we don't know what it is, we'll just say it's some kind of autoimmune condition.
Yeah, give it a label.
There's inflammation going through the body, but we don't know why. So let's put it in this category. The body must be making a mistake. And I think some, like the hubris of that, and just the even idea that our intelligence of what's in our cell structure that's evolved over how many billions of years, I don't know, depending on what your thoughts and beliefs are. But I think we can all agree our bodies are quite advanced vehicles of technology and biology, and it's incredible. So to think that nature somehow is turned on itself in a destructive way inside the body just randomly, or because we don't know, I think it's really foolish to think that way. And so from a Chinese medicine point of view, you'd always look at, there's an imbalance here. We don't know where it's coming from necessarily until we maybe do an assessment, ask some questions, get a sense of where's the disharmony in this person's life that is now being reflected inside the body, and following the wisdom of the body. So usually when I'm working with people, these are the questions I'm asking is, let's help your system. Your system's crying for help. Let's not suppress that, because that's more of a conventional approach. It's just like shove that deeper into the body, lock it in the closet, and let's hope that somehow yields a good results over years. And it never does, I can tell you, has been in practice for a long time. And it's like, why don't we go the other way? Body, what is causing so much disturbance in here? Where are you hurting the most? Where are you under resourced? Where are the organ systems not functioning well because of, XYZ? And, we get there through being in proximity and talking about it and figuring out, oh, this person hates their job. They've been in that for 20 years and they're forcing their body to override their true inherent knowing of how they feel. Yeah, that's going to create some imbalance or disturbance in the body. And of course, these things, show up physically. And in all my years of practice, the more I practice, the more I realize everything comes from an emotional and mental standpoint. And the physical manifestation is the last thing to show up. And so the wisdom of the body is producing symptoms so that we can actually slow down, listen, follow the path and find out where's the core root here. And that's the other thing I've always loved about Chinese medicine is we're looking for root source disturbances. And they could be many. They could be toxins, pathogens of all kinds, bacteria, whatever it might be. But well beyond that too, because they never really separated in Chinese medicine philosophy the mind and the body. That's more of our modern phenomenon is the emotions are over here, the body's over here. They don't have any influence on each other. No, of course not. And somehow thousands of years ago, every culture on the planet knew that. And
right.
Then in our modern society, that's kind of hokey. But a lot of us are remembering, many, many more people are remembering because the body is communicating that truth. The body can't lie.
That's it. How I have so many things as you're speaking, because you're speaking to old me, past me, who I never took the time to seek out any type of anything outside of allopathic care. Like that was what I was programmed and conditioned as a Canadian girl born in the 70s. When the body is screaming at you, which I never thought of it like that. That's what's happening. You go to the doctor, and when you go to the doctor, they're training, like no shade. They are trained to match the symptom to the prescription, and that's the system you're in. So by the time I even had the awareness to seek out someone like you or Dr. Desiree's naturopathic doctor, I had been taking pharmaceuticals for over 10 years. And like you said, the body is matter. It's solid. It took me a long time to get myself in that state. I would never in those 10 years was looking at root cause. So I was never addressing it, but masking it by something that was then causing side effects. So for you, when you get people like, gosh, if I had come earlier, but how many of us don't go earlier? Because we actually don't live in a system that believes it's the first step. And then my question to you is, how many of your clients are coming because they have failed? And then you've got to actually do some, like for me, there was some repairing to do before I could kind of start on the rebuilding of exactly what you're saying. This was the answer for me. And it's not one thing. So many modalities now are let's just get your system back to baseline, and it's not perfect, and then get you going there. And that takes time. And I think that's a big, we live in this fast-paced society that wants it right now. So when people come to you, are they coming sooner than you expected? Or are you getting all the me's that have been like, okay, I've been trying for 10 years the other way. Now it's your turn to undo this mess.
I've definitely seen quite a variety. And I would say as I educate patients or people get to know this type of thought or this type of philosophy of, oh, you don't have to wait to be in incredible disharmony or disease. You can treat it really early on. And so I think in speaking about that, I think that's inherently some of the deprogramming that a lot of us are remembering. Is that that's actually the natural state, is to attune to what's going on. So even in the animal kingdom, which I tune into all the time for my own answers and, reflect that back to patients is we've lived in many people, the society programming, and still now quite strong. We live in an override culture.
Yeah.
And, I'll speak as a man growing up in rural Alberta, farming, oil rigs, construction. I
Yeah.
love that I have that background because it's helped me a lot in my life and medicine and everything else. And a lot of those environments were really powerful override methodology. If you're sick, tired, injured, whatever, it doesn't matter. You get the job done,
Do it
you push,
anyway.
pressure, force, all of those different things. So a lot of us were trained early on, don't listen to the body, override that, and then keep going. And if you run into any issues or anything, double down, override that more.
Yeah.
Take more pain medication, take more of
Yes.
this, more of that. And even in that athletics, as I played a lot of athletics and played hockey and, just get me to play the game,
Yeah.
whatever's required. And, pro athletes, I've worked with a lot of pro athletes over the years too, and Olympians. And, there's that cost of, oh, I have an injury, but I'm performing tomorrow. So whatever it takes, cortisone shots, this, that, whatever,
Get me there.
just get me there. But then nobody really talks about the cost after that of what it takes when we override our system. So when somebody overrides their system mentally, emotionally, physically for a long time, the biology is going to respond to that in some way.
Yeah.
But I think in our intelligence in the frontal lobe, which a lot of animals don't have, which is kind of their advantage, is they can't do that because it would put them in harm's way. It puts them in danger. If a deer just kept running and running and running and running, it would kill itself.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like that parallel when we see in society with autoimmune conditions going through the roof, how many people are doing that? They're just never stopping. For all kinds of reasons. Survival, I get it, it's expensive to live and inflation, and so many people are feeling like they don't have the choice. They can't stop. I see this with moms a lot, parents. Like, you can't just not show up for your kids that day, especially when they're young. And so there's often the override in that because we're lacking community, we're lacking, support and the individualized culture and the isolation. So I know I'm painting a picture of a lot of layers here. So people showing up in my clinic could be in any number of those scenarios. And it's like, how far are you from your core baseline? Mild, medium, extra hot, spicy, like, whoa,
extra tasty, crispy.
Yeah, the string on the kite is like all the way out. And then we're working on rewinding all the way back of all of the times, all the places that somebody may have self-abandoned in work, life, relationships, health, whatever it might be. It's like, oh yeah, I don't really drink water at all. I just drink 3 coffees a day. I'm like, all right, you got some dehydration going on. And, all these things can sometimes be quite basic, but this is what sometimes is just the most loving thing we could do is hear somebody's story and start to see where are all these places that are an opportunity to start coming back into connection with self. Because if the immune system has gone off the rails, it's because its intelligence is leading somebody in that way so that they get themselves back on. We just most of us weren't taught that methodology or that philosophy growing up. So it seems foreign of if we're attuning into our bodies and listening, anything that's out of balance a little bit, you'd notice and you'd make a little course correction, make an adjustment, and it would never be allowed to unwind completely unless we've been taught to not listen to that intelligence. And so a lot of us are remembering, oh yeah, our bodies actually are speaking to us all the time and the body knows. So what if I listened to the body instead of silencing it? What would happen? And I can tell you often what happens is, people shed their autoimmune conditions and their inflammation like you and your journey, and then come into these beautiful, like, radiant spaces of the body in balance. And you're like, oh yeah, it turns out the body can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The belief when you feel it, I think of as you're speaking like a battery. And I think people love an analogy. And when it started to shift for me, I almost started thinking of myself as this battery that I could start to notice the drains, the leaks. Like, oh, that was it. That was a leak. That just happened. That conversation with that person or being in that space. And I could feel the battery going. And then also recognizing, oh, this is charging me. This thing over here. Like, hey, I just went for a walk outside. That's all I did. But I feel my battery charged. So now I have more resilience for that leaky thing that's still my reality. And it almost became like a game for me. How can I identify the leaks, the draining. What's draining me so low that I don't have what you're saying? I don't have this immune system intelligence available to me because my body's so busy just trying to plug the leak. And as I quit my job, like you're saying. Sometimes it's that drastic. And I
Mhm.
also have a best friend who did the same thing 10 years later. And it sounds so extreme. And I mean, we're not telling everybody, go quit your job, get the divorce, do the thing right away. But when the drain is something that is all day, every day, it's a hard thing to drain if you're not willing to change.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for a practitioner to identify that for you because our lives are all so different. And the
Mhm.
drain could be the silliest little things. But if you are willing to stop and hear your body with the whispers, then you don't have to hear it scream. You don't have to get to that huge friction point. And sometimes it is going to have, like you said, just talking, just having a practitioner who will listen because a GP doesn't have time for that in your 5-minute appointment. You will identify it yourself. So I'm sure you have had many people come to you and they only needed a visit to go, oh, that's the thing. That is the thing that is my leak that is draining me. And when we can find the ways. And then you get to add on all the fun stuff of how do I get this? How do I get my regulation back? How do I build up? And that's when, breath work and meditation and yoga and being in nature and all those fun things come back as the fun ways
Yeah.
to plug the holes. So I
Oh,
love I
huge.
love that you
Mhm.
are I love that you are a Canadian dude from Alberta. Because I think that's a story that this is all very like, oh, part of the feminine divine movement. And it's so not. And I think you met my husband at your retreat as well. He's very similar to you who has experienced the same things, but doesn't have the vocabulary to share it with the other dudes in his life that he's now going, why won't they listen? Sometimes you got to hear it from somebody relatable. And I love
Mm.
that about you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, and I, like I said, I'm really grateful for all the experiences I had growing up that way
Yeah.
because it gave me a really solid foundation, yeah, to be able to connect with lots of people from all walks of life,
Yes.
really. And I've seen loggers and truckers and carpenters and, guys that work in the bush and all
Yeah.
kinds of things. And yeah, they get sick
They
and
need
they
it
have
too.
symptoms too. And they often really
Mhm.
need quite a bit of support, but they're not always aware of how to get it or seeking it
Yeah.
and not wanting to get too far off the beaten track until we have a conversation and normalize some of these things of, animals will do this beautifully. If you have a
Yeah.
population of deer that are in an environment that's making them sick, do you think they'll stay there? Of course not. They'll move
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
otherwise they won't survive. So if
Yeah.
there's water contamination or food is scarce or something like that, they're going to naturally go to where they can thrive and really protect themselves and procreate and all of those things so that they survive as a species. And so in human frontal lobe thought, somehow that gets overridden a lot. People will stay in environments that are really unhealthy and not resource themselves and then just keep going and wonder why things are not going well or why they're so tired all the time. So many people nowadays, it's like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired.
Yes.
And, we can get into all these layers too. But if we're paying attention more, the answers are usually right there.
Right
Sometimes
there.
it's hard to see it, but it's there.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Okay, earlier you mentioned emotions, and I really love what you said how in Chinese medicine, they didn't separate the mind and body. And I really think that that's such a big piece for so many people is that just emotions in general, whether it's suppressing them, not having an awareness of them, and just not being able to express them. Can you explain how emotions impact physical health from a TCM perspective and just your philosophy of health?
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned this through my own experiences also. And of course, Chinese medicine school, but I did science prior to going into Chinese medicine. And so I've always loved biology and just the understanding of the body and then taking that into a deeper philosophy that's been around for thousands of years. And one of the things that they realized, whoever all the thousands of amazing practitioners were over thousands of years who got the downloads on the meridian systems and acupuncture, and was that they would pair each of the main yin organs with an emotion. And, some people know this really well now. And, for anybody, if this is a repeat, it's worth repeating. The liver, such a powerful organ. It's like such a powerhouse that is working really hard, more now than ever, because the amount of toxins we're exposed to as a human species. The liver's a major filter, and it's got to do a heck of a lot of work to try and neutralize that to keep us in balance. The other thing with the liver, though, is the emotion associated with the liver is anger. And I don't know about both of you, but the liver and anger and that complex is something that a lot of us were trained to suppress and override also.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
liver
totally.
and anger, not welcome,
Yeah, especially I think for women.
especially for women.
It's
Yeah,
a funny thing to say, like thinking
Mhm.
of the history you talked about, it's almost acceptable to like show some anger and aggressiveness when you're in this very masculine environment, but never is acceptable the way that we would have grown up or in a
absolutely.
classroom. Like you push that stuff down.
Oh,
That's not
yeah.
like be a good girl.
Yeah, so those types of programs, those types of patterns that many of us were given is anger's not welcome here, it's not appropriate, you're never allowed to be angry. And it's like, how do you go through life
Yeah.
without coming across breaches of boundaries, conflicts, those, like, it's
Yep.
going to happen. So
Yeah.
a lot of my teachers would say, none of the emotions are bad. The suppression of them is a problem, though, because it'll block the energy. So if somebody suppresses a lot of anger in their system, and I would say this is like through our society, especially us polite Canadians, oh, we're
Yes.
good, I'm happy. And I'm
It's
like,
fine.
that's not accurate. The amount of Canadians, I'm like, especially, I think there's a lot of repressed anger in Canadians because you can't push that energy somewhere in the body and expect no repercussions. The energy can't be created or destroyed, so it has to go somewhere. So it shows
Mhm.
up in autoimmune conditions, in blaming and shaming other people and pointing the finger. And so really to look at the main organ systems of that intelligence is so real because suppression of anger will often cause liver disease. Non-alcoholic
Mhm.
fatty liver disease is
Yes,
really
rampant.
common right now.
Yeah.
Why is that? Too many toxins, too much suppressed anger in society across the board.
Yeah.
And so there's blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, blood sugar issues. A lot of these can be related back to the liver for people that are like, what does that mean? It means those things. It also means you're going to be short-tempered, maybe no patience, not as kind as what you'd like to be, or no spaciousness in your own system, and feeling way more stressed, even if the stimulus is relatively low because the liver's stuck. And then you can see how that starts compounding. And then the more stressed you get, the more stuck the liver gets. Everything starts backing up in the body, and then more and more things start jumping on board, and allergies and histamine responses. And suddenly, somebody comes in and they give me the laundry list of all these symptoms, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about your liver. Yep. Let's start there. So that's just one example. And then if we go to kidneys, the other like really powerful, important yin organ, that's the emotion of fear. And look at our society, how fear is propagated in massive ways.
Mhm.
You can imagine what that leads to in the body: adrenal burnout, poor sleep, all kinds of things, anxiety, nervous system disorders, nervous system dysregulation of like, yeah, how are we supposed to stay regulated all the time with so much fear living in the body?
Yeah,
And then,
especially
we
the
go to,
last 6 years. Look what
oh,
we've all just
100%.
come through.
Yeah, so that's
Mhm.
I'm still seeing that living
Yeah.
in the biology of the population. And then everybody's like, why are all the autoimmune disorders skyrocketing and all these, chronic inflammatory conditions? And I'm over in the corner putting up my hand of like, I think
I
I
know
might
this
have some
one.
ideas about just somebody ask me, please ask me what I see. And, then we get to the spleen. The spleen is consistent in Chinese medicine with the translation would be excessive contemplation,
Mm.
overthinking.
The monkey
Yeah.
mind. Analysis paralysis.
Oh my goodness. So right away, even just talking about spleen, kidneys, liver, anger, fear, crazy busy mind, overthinking, those three alone will explain probably almost every autoimmune condition and chronic inflammatory condition that we have. And then the other one that's a big key is the lungs. The lungs is more grief and sadness. So, if somebody didn't have their symptoms kind of in the pile of these organs already, just add in repression and suppression, or unable to process and feel grief, or not allowed to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a lot of things going on in the body in a nutshell with major organ systems. So people that have chronic bronchitis, they get pneumonia all the time. They got, asthma and those types of things. I will always start looking at how much grief, maybe even ancestrally, got passed
Yes.
forward to them that their ancestors or themselves have never stopped or had an opportunity or felt safe enough to go into the depth of that feeling. And when they do, they can breathe again after. And I've seen it firsthand without giving a formula, without clearing all the bacteria from the lungs, which we'll often do as well. But them being able to process, when you talk about not processing the emotion, when somebody starts to actually unpack and process this stuff, it is massive what happens in the body. It's just, we weren't taught that in school, And so thank you for giving me an opportunity to share and speak and teach about these things that I've learned. And then I've also seen in the clinic thousands of times. It has very real ramifications. There's nothing hokey about it. If you want to heal the body, you got to work on the emotions and you got to be willing to feel it and then give the organs support. And the body definitely will heal.
Yeah.
It definitely will.
Do you find that people know? So everything that I think audience out there, I know what you're thinking, like, oh my gosh, could it be that simple? But do people coming to you know how to feel their feelings? Is it as simple as identifying for them, there's likely a blockage here. Let's talk about fear. You've identified some things. Now go home and do your work. Or are people coming with no skills on then the practical application of how to go home? Or I don't know, maybe it's sit with you and, cry a pile of tears in your clinic. But I think that's a missing piece of the model in general, is the space, the community that, we were out with a friend last week and she's going through a divorce. So there's all the things. There's fear and there's anger and there's grief, like pile all of that up. And the expectations she has of herself are, I think, a pretty good blueprint of what we see happening in the world. And we were in a bigger coffee shop and she said, well, but I just don't want to cry. And I said, what do you mean? Well, because we're in public. And that just led to the most beautiful conversation of and that's where we're at. We don't feel that it's acceptable to experience our feelings. And we said, you cry right now, you give every other person in this place permission to feel their feelings. You give them a chance to get in their heart and feel compassion for you, which will replace whatever other yucky feeling they were having. We have to become a world that believes all emotions are beautiful and that feels safe to express them, not just behind a closed door or in a, beautiful created breathwork experience. So when people are coming to you, are you helping them through that in real time? Are there specific tools that you're giving them? Or do you find that there are people that actually know they just needed the prescription? Go home and feel your feelings, however you do that.
Yeah, I think there's multiple layers there. And thanks for sharing that. It's beautiful when we can just be witnessed and be seen and have real conversations. And so I'd say a couple things around that. Maybe one of the most important things that I've seen in the clinic, or whether I'm leading retreats or doing smaller events or big events, is this is what we want to create. We want to create safety. And we want to build a vessel and a container that feels like people are being supported enough so that they can actually just feel what's there for them. And so in a one-to-one visit in the clinic, I'm really present. And I think sometimes people are a little bit shocked by that or surprised by that, because it's just something I've been working on and cultivating and doing my own work around, is how to drop into that more. And so right away, if you have somebody present, it's like you were present with your friend the other day, that then there's a different frequency.
Yeah.
There's a different availability. I'm not thinking about anyone or anything else other than being really clear in the moment with that person. And that alone often creates a shift when we're witnessed in that way, or when I've been witnessed in that way by, friends and brothers of mine to help hold hard things for me. That presence is one of the most healing things and is so underrated. And then the second thing is just the invitation of, let's slow down and see what wants to emerge to the surface. And that also seemingly is really rare, that people are rushing and then it prevents them from dropping in and being present. Of course, it's like a flower. You can't force it to unfold if there's no sun.
Yeah.
If there's sunlight shining, it will slowly open up because the divinity of nature has programmed it to do that. And I think we're the same as humans. And so if we're providing that for each other, that's one of the greatest gifts we could give each other. And so as a practitioner, is maybe even less about all the things that I think I know about biology and toxins and everything else and genetics. And I love studying that and understanding, and that has a place too. But first step is presence. Second step is spaciousness. And then just creating a space where somebody can actually start to even locate, oh, there is some feelings here. And so like yesterday was a great example. And I was chuckling to myself last night of, was there any patients I saw this week that didn't cry?
And that's success.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the success.
Yeah, not because that's the goal.
No, but they needed it.
But
if they walked into
yeah.
your space and were able to do that, what were you feeding the field that day that allowed that to come out for them? And that Dr. Desiree always says, like, so many of her patients just need that small win. The little thing that is the catalyst that will be what knocks everything down. And a good cry is that thing for so many because they haven't done it. So I don't know how many people I've heard say, well, I can't cry.
It's so much energy in the body. I had a patient last week say, I haven't cried like this in like maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, is apologizing. Sorry.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
the sorries.
Stop that.
Yes. The guilt.
Lovingly, you're not allowed to say sorry for crying in here. And and so much energy shifts and moves. And so yesterday, because I think this will be relevant for a lot of your listeners too, and anybody really. So there's like an epidemic of anemia right now, low iron.
Yeah.
I've never had more patients in my life in the last year or two that say, I got iron infusions. So I'm like, oh, this is really curious. Why are we having to pump liquid iron into people's bodies? This is a big problem. What is happening? And I think, well, and the patient I had yesterday is really interesting what we discovered. And she's had a bunch of iron infusions, like 12 of them, maybe the last few years.
Whoa.
Pretty insane, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hearing this more and more and more because the body's not absorbing, holding, receiving nourishment. And so that's kind of where we went with the conversation. And I see this with a huge amount of people in the population. And, maybe we'll speak to the women at the moment is if you're not in the receiving mode because you don't feel safe or you've been overridden with programming, society, patriarch, whatever, unhealthy aspects of controlling energy, whatever we want to label that, then the body cannot be receptive. And so many people are dumping massive amounts of iron and supplements and all kinds of things in the body. And guess what? The body cannot receive it. Where is it all going? How can you still be anemic with 12 iron infusions?
Yeah.
Like,
you got
and
really
then
expensive urine.
Yeah. It's so hard on the liver and it's way too much. And so what we discovered through just back and forth and me listening and being present and having conversations and asking, this person is not able to receive love really at all. So blocked. And I asked the question, scale of 1 to 10. 10 out of 10 being like, you love yourself unconditionally. 1 or 0 is incredibly low. She said 1. And I'm like, so you're at a deficit of 9. Of course your body can't receive the iron.
Yeah.
Of course your body cannot locate, absorb any kind of nourishment mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So your body is hemorrhaging love that you're not holding for yourself. And then it's like, let's just illuminate that pattern because you could continue getting iron infusions. But if we can't receive, and this goes for men too, all of us, that this is actually a big issue that is really overlooked. And you're not going to have that conversation in most doctors' offices of like, I want to get to the root issue. Where did all the iron go? It went right through the body because she could not receive any of it.
Yeah.
Because the energy in her life, she can't receive herself because she doesn't love herself.
Yes.
And then we all have a different story of maybe how we ended up there. But these are the things that create huge breakthroughs in medicine. So if I don't address that with somebody, I could give them the best supplements in the world. If they could only receive 10% of what I'm giving them, it's not going to really do anything. So I think these are the places that need to be uncovered more, again, which is why I love doing big events to create a space where there's a lot more frequency available for the receiving aspect. Let's create a space where people can receive each other. And then stuff starts shifting in a big way.
Yeah. And boy, did it. I think, well, as we mentioned, I think we're still all like, you shook us up. You shook us up good, Dr. Kevin. Zach
Sorry,
Bush.
not sorry.
Right? But it was so, we think that when you think, we've figured it out, we got it, we're on the path, we know we will never know all the things. I had to come to terms with, okay, I'm never going to know all the things, but I feel like we're in a good place on this path of self-discovery and unlearning and unconditioning and this new becoming of how we see being healthy in the world. And then we show up at your event. And we get the smackdown of, oh, you thought you were good? Let's spin that field down to the core of any last ounce of all the emotions that I'm a happy lady. I'm happy. And I get the, are you happy all the time? And I am. But even if you're like me and you're happy all the time, there's stuff in there that I have never gone that deep. And I have done the work and the retreats. And, I've had a psychedelic journey that I was open about in my book that brought up a lot. But your retreat, sitting between strangers, is something I hadn't done. I've done all my work on my own or with my community of I'm lucky to be surrounded by very aligned, connected people. But there was a woman beside me, and I was in the front row that day. I think you found me with an eagle wing at one point and moved some stuff around. But we were in a meditation. Tears came. I allow them to come. I know that's good. I know that is stress leaving my body, and I'm always game for that. But as I felt the woman beside me begin to shake, it allowed me to dig deeper for something. And when I really opened up and allowed it, I have never ugly cried like that in my life. And when we were brought back, she and I looked at I could cry thinking about it right now. She and I looked at each other, never met this woman before. She lived on the other side of the country. We probably hugged for 3 minutes and felt something in that release that was so needed for both of us and so authentic. And so to me was the answer. I know she went home a little more healed. I know I went home. I went home pretty shaken up, but with a new level of awareness of even if you're out there and you're listening, you think, oh, I'm already doing the work. Sometimes you need to step outside and do something different and do it with others to find the real big nuggets that are down there holding you back, because we can heal to a certain level that we feel is acceptable. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm doing the thing. But it can get so good when you do what you're talking about, the real deep stuff.
More goosebumps, and I felt some emotion with your share there too, because it's so meaningful for me. And this is like my heart's calling, is to continue to create spaces where these types of things can happen. Yeah. Because it's true, like we can do a lot on our own. I've had thousands of hours of self-reflection and contemplation and, visits with therapists and somatics, and amazing and powerful and beautiful. And if we keep in our isolation, it only goes so far. And it's like, people that are single and then they get in relationship and they're grounded and stable and everything else. And then they completely destabilize once they're in this love relationship. And it's because it's inviting that next level. And when I think of all the organs that I was talking about, the heart's at the center of that.
Yes.
That none of the organs work in isolation. The kidneys needs the spleen needs the liver, and vice versa. And they all kind of work in this harmonious, ideally, internal environment that can create harmony in the external environment. But if those are kind of pulled apart and isolated from each other, they go downhill really quickly. And so creating a space where you didn't need the words necessarily with the woman sitting beside you, like there's an understanding of something much deeper happening that does go beyond language. It's like heart connection and soul connection and energy. And I think that's, that's so much. And she obviously felt you. That's so much of what I think is the remembering that's coming back. Yeah. And whether I'm in the clinic that way or whether I'm in front of 500 or 600 people and we're in an event together, that's available if we create the conditions for it, and also the bravery and the vulnerability of I'm just going to let go and see what's here. And then it turns out, there's quite a bit here. And then it can be life-changing. And as we integrate those experiences, there's a new expression in the cellular body. And there's a new expression through our DNA. And then there's an even greater brightness that shows up on the other side of some of those things, and how we can't really do that on our own in the same way. That
Yeah.
I do believe we need a soul witness in certain aspects of our life. And, friends of mine, Mike and Courtney, were there, and they both work with, couples and nervous systems and relationships. And one of the things her and I facilitated together a lot years ago, she would say this all the time: some things are too big for one person to hold.
Yes.
And
We were never meant to hold them on our own.
no, and the
No.
health of connected community does often open up more than when we're on our own. And especially when it's being held well, or there's enough safety in the field, and you guys had your own little bubble of safety, maybe with you and just that woman beside you, because you both were allowing so much to be received and integrated and shed and cleared, that it opens up a new space for way more potential. And that's in a room of almost 600 people that I do find we can still have healing is intimate.
Yeah.
At the deepest level, when we're vulnerable, and whether there's 2 people or 10 or 100 or 1,000, there can be such connected, intimate spaces in there that shift everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're going as humanity, of we need more of that.
Agreed. Less
Yeah.
separation. And I think you nailed it. When I recognized her energy, I realized that it wasn't just her trauma, her fear, whatever was happening, that's what she's sharing with the world. As she releases it, we all benefit from it. It's not just one person's to hold on your own. We're all made from the same stardust. When we heal ourselves, we contribute to the collective healing. And I think we hear people say it, but that's what I was experiencing. It was almost the beauty of witnessing her changing the space around us, and then me getting the permission and her feeling me. It was this beautiful unspoken conversation that I thought, okay, how do we tell people that we need to do more of this? And it has to be in Starbucks. Like, I'm, in the grocery store lineup. Can you see someone without having to speak to them? Can you let your heart regulate somebody without them even knowing it? And that's the nerdy science that I'm into, because the answer is yes. Because the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And you provide that.
It's that liberation of energy, right? What we're all describing is, instead of holding it within our bodies, we're allowing it to be expressed, moving through it. And that energy can be created for other things, right? It's liberated so that it can be used for love or a different emotion, and sharing that with other people, that energy, that felt space between each other. Okay, going back to what you mentioned, Dr. Kevin, about burnout, and you talked about how that is related to the kidneys because the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. Burnout is something that we hear so much within our community. And, we see this and we hear this from people. They are burnt out, whether it is the mom who's holding all the things and the mental load, or the parents doing all these things. We know in traditional Chinese medicine, vitality is connected to kidney essence. Can you explain to people who are listening what that means, and maybe why so many people feel depleted? Like, is burnout the same as depleted essence?
Sometimes yes, sometimes maybe no. And so we'll pull that apart a little bit. So the way I look at it is, in a Chinese medicine viewpoint, the spleen is what builds qi, like it builds vital force day to day. The food that we eat, the air that we breathe, it gets alchemized in the body, and the spleen kind of takes that and builds it into usable vital energy for us, and moves our muscles and animates our bodies and our minds and everything else. The kidneys is more like the internal savings account. So if the spleen was the checking account, the kidneys housing that root essence, like the jing, that's your savings account. And I think in society, talking about all the programming, the overriding of going into your savings accounts is where rapid aging happens, and bigger, more powerful illnesses tend to happen, because maybe somebody's been burning out that checking account and they're like, oh, I got to dip into my savings. And they can do that for a time. But then when something big comes along and there's nothing in the savings account, then that's a problem, because the body has no resources left. So I think for a lot of modern society, Western culture here, we're trying to do way too much, and then confused and expecting the body to be able to match the demand that's in the mind that society is saying you need to do. And as entrepreneurs, this is a big one for all the leaders and guides out there. And, we're all entrepreneurs here. It's a challenge because you want to be successful and you want to have an impact on all those things. And it can take a lot of time and energy and focus that if you don't, you might not feel you're going to have an impact or survive as a company or all of those different things. But that happens in the household, that happens with mothers and fathers, and it happens in any places where we're trying to take on too much too quickly. And so this is the challenge that I think we're in of why we're seeing the illness that we're seeing is there's never been more information overload, which is taxing for the mind. So it's taxing the spleen, overthinking, and we're on all the time. And, we have technology, which is beautiful in some ways. But if we go back 30 years, if somebody wasn't at work, they were off work. Whereas that's not true anymore. So there's not really key downtime unless you're very disciplined and you choose to take that, leave your phone at home, whatever. So we've got that. And I'm just going to put that on the table is like people are on a lot. And so that burns up and uses some chi. And then if we're faced with a lot of collective overridden fear, scarcity, challenge, chaos, all those things, that puts some stress on the mind and the body that if we didn't have technology or didn't have news outlets, nobody would really know that there was chaos in the next country, town, village, whatever. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying physiologically, there's another thing that's going to consume and burn up some chi and maybe put a little bit of strain and cortisol through the kidneys, add some chronic stress. And then you could go in their individual lives of what we're all working on, what we're all doing, trying to like keep up with life and give ourselves, good quality of life and provide for our kids or families or whatever that might be. Suddenly you've got a pretty big load of the checking account supplying this. And most people, what I'm seeing is that is well past the checking account capacity, day-to-day energy. And then if you're not sleeping and maybe not eating that well, that starts to drain all these things too. So then you start to dip into the kidney essence. And when you dip into the kidney essence, that is much more difficult to replenish, if at all. And so people that have unfortunately, had a life where they've got into serious drugs and alcohol and addictions and like so much love and compassion for that burns essence. And that's often why they may appear to be much older than they are because they drain their kidney chi, they drain their essence. And we also see it now. That's like an extreme version, the little bit at a time. People burning their kidney chi, it's like burning the candle at both ends. In Chinese medicine, that's like consuming essence of your body. And when you do that, it's really hard to get that back. And so it's like the programming mentally that doing more is somehow more valuable, or I'm going to source my love more, I'm going to become known, or all these things, and then I'll feel good about myself. Or, we could have a million different stories, but it's often harming the kidneys. Doing too much. And I shared this in a masterclass a little while ago. We were talking about fear in the kidneys, and I've got a masterclass series I'm doing for the year with like word of the year, but also bringing it to the organs. So I'm going to do one later in March about the liver. Liver is springtime. So really tying into that energy, and then like, let's unpack some anger that's in there, because holding a lot of anger suppressed in the body also consumes chi for the system because it burns up energy. And so if we kind of look at the layers of the body, how are we behaving collectively as a society that's unsustainable? And it's a lot. So the remembering I'm seeing happen, wellness farms, people homesteading again, people homeschooling again, and all of these things, because they realize, wait, this
moving to the lake.
Yeah, this isn't actually healthy. And I've worked with CEOs. I've worked with a lot of people that have been successful by some of the finance metrics, perhaps. But they may have paid for that, and their kidney chi, their essence is really low. And I see it in men all the time, epidemic, low testosterone. That's connected to kidney essence and jing. And so that is massive right now. But in younger and younger people, it's because there's been an unsustainable life equation that a lot of people are starting to question. Hang on a second. I went to school. I did the thing. I got married. I got the job. I worked 80 hours a week. And all right, what's happening?
Something's
My
missing.
body's shutting down. Maybe I don't feel fulfilled, like whatever that story is. And so there's a lot of questioning going on right now, which I think is healthy because the biology of our species is screaming for that. When you have, I was talking to somebody from the US yesterday, owns a big company in the health space. 6 out of 10 people in the US have some kind of chronic health condition now.
Yeah.
60%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 5 years ago, it was at like 30-40%.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
what are we doing?
Yeah. I just was in a conversation as well, someone in the US with the statistic that like clinical research, well reviewed, 50% of the American population describes themselves as lonely. 50%. That was shocking to me, but so connected. It's the separation. The more separated we become, and when people can describe it and feel it, which the conversation between, there's a difference between alone and lonely, because I think alone could be great. I mean, I love alone. I
Yeah.
love alone now that I know the beauty in what gets done in that alone time for me is sacred. But the lonely description, yeah, that's not going to get better if we don't change something drastically. And I think everything you just said, the prescription would be slow down. And how do we do that? And like you're saying, I know you have a teenager, I have teenagers. We're not teaching them slower in the modern education system, the modern public education system, the overscheduling. So you're talking about the burnt out moms and the burnt out this and that. I'm seeing it so much younger than ever before. I was an elementary school teacher for 20 years. Things have changed. It
Yeah.
is different. The overscheduling of, you got to do all of the things. When are people sitting down at the table? When are people getting out into going for a camping trip where you're not scrolling the whole time? Where are we going to find the place as a society where we say, okay, we've hit that 60% disease rate, the 50% loneliness rate, something big has got to shift, or do we come back from this? And I feel for both of you sitting here, because I think this is where people will go. They will go outside of the modern Western medical system to say, okay, I recognize it in myself. I want to be part of the solution. Where do I begin? How do I start with this? And it's not easy to hear from your doctor, well, you got to slow down. You've got to do less, because we are not conditioned to do less.
Yeah.
It's this subconscious, the programs, the autopilot, everything we see is about this. Success equals the amount of accomplishments and certifications and dollar signs that you have beside your name. So I'm so excited to hear you say it and know that you are saying it to your patients. And I know Dr. Des is saying the same, that Dr. Des has just been talking about simplifying. How do we simplify? How do we be, and I don't mean we, the three of us, I mean, how do the people that are remembering help to set this example? Because it's not to get off of social media. Because if there isn't a good balance of the message on social media being put your phone down, or notice I'm outside while I'm sharing this download I'm getting for you, how do we teach the younger generations that slow is good? And, it's living in the city where, everything is available to me by DoorDash. And, right now isn't going to end well for you. And trust us, we know, because we did it and we're here. And let's move back. Let's just move back. Yeah. This prescription to slow down.
That's right.
We got to figure that one out. And I think it happens in retreat. I think that it's a hard thing because there's a cost involved, but when we can step away from our life for long enough to recognize the real difference, you see the contrast. The juxtaposition is required to know, oh, my life doesn't look like I feel so different after 3 days of no, groceries and no traffic and no social media and no family trauma and no scheduling. Like, true retreat is an opportunity to see what you look like without that. And then how do we integrate ourselves back in when we have seen it? So I do think there's a value in this creating of what you do, creating of these times for the awareness to bubble up to the top, so that you can try to create it in your day to day best as we can.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well said.
Okay, for people who are feeling chronically exhausted or burnt out, or, this episode has really been speaking to them, I know everybody's health and journey in life, it's so nuanced and there's no cookie cutter thing to do or protocol. But if you were to give three top things, like the top three things that you share with your patients, what would you tell someone who is feeling all of the ways that we've talked about today? What are three of the
Yeah.
top things?
Let me just tune into that for a moment and practice what I preach by slowing down for a second and just breathing. That's probably it.
And give
Okay.
everyone in the audience a chance to get out your pen and paper, because
Yeah.
we're going to get some. The how-to is the hardest part.
I think that maybe going back to the beginning of the conversation is around nature, but I'll maybe say it in a different way. To get back in harmony with your nature, whatever that might be. And when we're in disharmony, it's because we're in disharmony with our own true nature, our own blueprint. And for me, anyway, what has worked is taking a breath and going into the forest or mountains or lake or river, or whatever it is. That just is what works for me. It doesn't have to work for everybody, but it allows me to reconnect with something real. It's not on social media. It's not on a screen. It's like listening to nature. And so I haven't really met anybody yet that gets the most incredible insights and downloads and wisdom when they're going 100 miles an hour. And so usually, and this is where the courage kicks in, is that you may get messages that you don't want. And I think a lot of people are avoiding that, which is why they're not slowing down. So they can stay ahead of the truth that they need to look at. And that might be where there's the biggest opportunity for all of us, even a little bit of, oh yeah, I scroll on my phone for an hour or two before bed the last 4 or 5 days in a row and I feel like garbage in the morning. The truth is you're going to need to take some responsibility for that. Nobody's going to resolve that for you. And that might be just one thing. And other times it's, oh, I do need to really look at my relationships. Oh, I do need to show up differently in friendship, or I need to start to be open to receive even a beautiful reciprocal friendship because somebody's giving, blocked on the receiving side of it. And so I usually get people to look at that. So if we had to recap, we got to get in harmony the best we can with our own true nature. And one of the best ways I found to do that is by getting in nature and taking some time. I've never met yet, and you can read it in books too, and hospice care and everything else, somebody that regretted spending time in nature or regretted really looking at the things that were really important, even if it was difficult to look at. So the habituated patterns of complacency, when we apply that illuminated vision of truth, it's not actually that complicated. And I agree with Dr. Des. And, it's like the simplification are often the most powerful things. We like to make things way more complex than needed. I've done that a lot. I know this from experience. I'm practicing all the time. It turns out breathing deeply and slowing down and spending some time in nature provides an environment internally for the body and the mind to shift and to see what it is that you do need to look at. And then what you do with that, of course, is up to you. And those are some of the second steps. But sometimes we get stuck on the how, or we don't really know because it's new or it's uncertain or we haven't done that thing yet. Yeah, I get that. But we got to kind of go back to the foundation first is breathe into the body, let that system come into a place of stillness, and the wisdom and your doorways will show themselves. It'll be there. But if we're not listening to receive anything, then it'll keep passing you by. And somebody might be, I don't know what to do. I'm so stuck and confused. Like I guarantee you haven't stopped or slowed down or given any spaciousness because we have inherent wisdom. And again, in the animal kingdom, how do the birds know when to migrate? How do they know when there's a storm coming? It's because they're listening and they're tuning in. And I believe we have that inherent capacity. And I believe a lot of people listening to this right now, we are feeling that collectively. There's a lot coming. There's a lot of things that we're orienting to that we may not understand cognitively yet, but we feel the energy shift. And I think that's why a lot of us are wanting to remember and slow down so that we can actually pay attention to navigate whatever, the next months and years hold for us. And then we can navigate it really beautifully and come into connection and community. So long answer to a question maybe, but that's what's up there
Profound.
today.
So much wisdom in that. And I hope that people, I mean, you live in British Columbia. Dr. Kevin's in the interior of British Columbia in Armstrong, BC, where I think there's magic there. We're all drawn to that. Dr. Des and I aren't far behind you. We will be we will no doubt live in a similar space, because you do feel different there. The energy is different when you dip in a lake, and you feel that's different than bath water. It's different than the hot tub. I don't know if it's the minerals I experience or what's happening. But for the listeners out there who are thinking, that sounds great, but I live in a high rise in downtown, wherever I live, and I can't get there given my day-to-day life. I think that they excuse themselves from changing their life because of their environment. And I want to say to them that it doesn't even have to be every day. It can be one, drive on the weekend and get yourself somewhere and bring that back with you. And I'm a meditator, and I get in the forest almost every day because I'm lucky to have a small community forest, but not like where you are. But we make time to go to that space for months at a time in our life because we can do that. But what I do have is the ability to close my eyes and go back to the places I have been in nature, because I took the time when I was there to pull in and feel and experience visually, to use the senses. And I think we use the senses too much. But if you use the senses when you are given those little times when you can be there and pull it in and feel what it feels like and understand the connection, when you close your eyes, so you're home in your high rise, and you can find some time for meditation, and people will say, but I don't know how to meditate. We got you. There's ways you can learn. You can go there. You can go there. People will say, go to your happy place. Bringing it into your life I'm looking behind you. I'm not sure if what I'm seeing is real wood, but I'm assuming yes.
It is. Yeah.
Bringing the elements into your home, bringing an animal into your life, whatever you can do to bring the nature to you, if you can't have it all the time, which is why we love mushrooms. Which is
Absolutely.
why, that's, somehow, I don't care if it's a plant on your windowsill that you water and nurture and speak to. You're not crazy. We can connect with nature the best we can given our circumstances. So I just want people to know, don't, say this isn't for me because I don't live near a forest. You've got to bring it to you. You are connected to it. Seeing that bird should make you think. It should bring us to that. We see birds flying in a flock. Go research what's happening there. It will blow your mind. Start getting curious about the animals that are in your neighborhood, that are close to you. Why does the beetle behave that way? Just starting to get curious about what's happening in nature will lead you down a path to all of the things that Dr. Kevin is talking about. Nothing's too small. Nothing's too small.
It all counts. Absolutely.
It all counts.
When we slow down, what comes up when we slow down? And I'm reminded of a saying that I had in my classroom. There's no Wi-Fi in the forest, but the connection is incredible.
Oh, beautiful.
I love that. Kevin, this was such a rich conversation. And I think so many people listening will just have gotten so much out of it. I know, Brandi, I think I can speak for you. The two of us, we just loved this conversation so much. If somebody wants to work with you or is curious about the work you do, you mentioned seeing patients in clinic, but you also do events. Where can they go to learn more and find out more about you?
newhumanevents.com will get people connected into the flow of events. And yeah, we are doing another round of New Human October 2nd to 4th this year. The theme is reunion. And really, that dropped in when I was in the forest hiking, months ago, of course. And it was and is the theme of unity and oneness and the remembering of that level of depth of connection of what we have available here, both with the planet that we live on and we call home, with ourselves and with each other. And so that's the vibe and the theme. So newhumanevents.com. And then I'm on Instagram, and that's usually where we announce lots of things as well. And that's just Dr. Kevin Preston. And I have a website, drkevinpreston.com as well. That's more on the clinical side. But Instagram and social is probably a great place to pay attention to what we're doing and what we're creating. And I am doing more local events, like smaller events. I just did one last weekend here in Vernon. And yeah, more to come. And that's maybe where there's like, 20, 30 people, 40 people, and,
Nice.
some of these smaller intimate spaces. And then we'll still create that potency and connection and intimacy at the New Human. And I can't announce some of the things just yet. I would love to share, but
But we
I'll
know
just
they'll be
let
good
everybody
given what's
feel.
happened in the past. We know they'll be good.
Everybody can just feel what I'm holding and planning right
I
now.
feel it. I'm feeling it.
Yeah,
I'm
there's some
feeling
energy moving through. So we're so excited for October, absolutely, and lots of things in between then. And I'm doing master classes online more now as well to speak and share and teach about these things, because I do want to let everybody know what I've learned in the clinic over the last nearly couple decades, that it can make an impact, and that we have way more potency in our bodies for healing and creativity and expression in the world than what we've been taught. So yeah, looking forward to lots more.
Amazing. Well, I can speak for all of us in the Eversio community, all of us on Team Eversio, that we're so grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing. You are feeding the field so much goodness, and it is felt through the screen. I'm not on social media often. I'm going there to check on our own business things, and you do pop up, and I feel you through that screen. And and it makes me grateful that there are people, Canadian dudes, doing such good work that you give others permission to do it. And if you haven't been to a New Human event, or you're thinking, oh, I'm curious, let that curiosity speak to you, because you will never feel more aligned with a massive group of people as you will when you go there. I don't know what it is. It's probably you, that you are kind of that center drawing this like a magnet goodness to you, but you don't even you just feel it. You just feel it by being with the people who come there. They're your people. So yeah, do your research, go and reach out. And thank you so much for what you are bringing to the world. You are definitely lifting the collective consciousness all on your own and spreading it far, far beyond where you are, like the mycelium in the forest. So this was such a pleasure, and we'll have to have you again.
I'd love that. And yeah, honor to chat with both of you, and keep doing what you're doing as well. I love your products and spreading goodness into the world and health and healing. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks to everybody listening. And yeah, we'll see everybody soon.
And now everyone, go outside.
Yes.
Hopefully you are already walking, but that's where I'm headed. Okay, have an amazing rest of the day, everyone, and we'll see you next time on the Eversio Experience.
Thank you, Biba.
We hope that you learned something new here today. If anyone you know could benefit from what we shared in this episode, please share it with them. And if you're interested in adding mushrooms to your life, then you can use code PODCAST15 to save 15% on your entire order at EversioWellness.com.
If you haven't yet left us a rating and review, subscribed to this podcast, or followed our social media accounts listed in the show notes, we would so appreciate that. And if you're not sure where to start, you can take our Mushroom Wellness Quiz. Thank you so much for sharing this moment with us. Until next time, be well.